Hi, above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today, and what an honor it is to bring back a guy that I was searching for a long time, but when I found him, it was almost too good to be true, and we had a chance to do set one last week, and got a chance today to go a little bit deeper with a great drummer. Ross Salomone, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you so much.
So, we have a game called Name That Voice. I'm going to put this in for you.
Okay.
Take a listen to it, and we'll come back.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, I ended up, going into rehab, and I had to, move out of New York. And, I had been playing, under the influence for so long that I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but, because of when I finally did get, go back and play, I have good friends in the business, and being able to go back to music straight and still and love playing and be in the same situations with people and not use anymore. It was good, and it was great to have that. I could have lost it all, and I didn't. And so, being able to come back to music, looking back on it, helped save my life. Drugs, I don't think they make you play better, but they can ease whatever pain you're going through to help you be able to concentrate on something that makes you feel good.
Ross Salomone, you want to take a guess at who that is?
Is he a drummer?
He certainly is.
Well, I'm not going to. I have a phrase of judge not, so tell me who it is.
Sure. That was my first interview in 2015 with Steve Gadd.
That's what I thought it would be.
And yeah. I've heard, it was sort of a route passing the Rubicon for me, because I asked him about a time in his career when he faced adversity and how he overcame it. And he could have given me some watered down answer, but he went there and he talked about, I have done interviews with Demiola talking about Steve. The stories are somewhat legendary about how much of a junkie he was and how amazing he could still play, even if after they woke him up in the studio because he was nodding off and they had this really complex 3-part thing. And I guess I would ask you, I've interviewed Michael Shreve and John McLaughlin and all these guys, and basically they saw all their friends becoming roadkill in late 60s, early 70s. A lot of people dying, a lot of people trashing themselves, and they didn't want to wind up like that. And then we're not talking about psychedelics or pot, but more hard drugs. And they found their own spiritual compass and basically saved their own lives. And they probably slipped and fell down a few times. But I just ask you if you could talk a little bit about a time in your career when you faced adversity, how you overcame it, and how it made you stronger.
Yes, I will. I'm not ashamed to talk about, being in Alcoholics Anonymous. But let me revamp on that third drummer before we start on that. Remember, we were talking about the neighborhood guys?
Yeah.
And we talked about Bobby Ruffino, who was the drummer in the Mob. And then there was Danny Serafin, who was the drummer in Chicago. And then there's Lee Graziano. He lived across the street from me on a corner, and he was the drummer in a group called the American Breed. They were one of the first bands in the 60s to have a huge hit called Bend Me, Shake Me. And if you ever find that, you should actually download that one drum part that he did in there. because he's got that same feel that the rest of this group of four has. And I do want to talk about my brother a little bit later. But
Of course.
do you want to hear about what happened, what it used to be like, and what it's like now?
Yeah. I guess,
that.
I mean, more to the point, like, why, like, did you feel like you were saved at a certain point? I mean,
Yeah, I do.
so just, that's what I'm curious. I'm not, I'd like to know about you being saved, and then ultimately how you've stayed on the righteous path.
Well, I was saved by my brother-in-law, Bob Schatz, who to this day I love him dearly for bringing myself and my wife into the program. We tried this geographical cure from Huntington Beach to California to go back to Illinois. And we decided to live with my in-laws, and they were really happy to see us. They wanted us back. But they didn't realize why we were coming back. We came back because we thought we were going to get out of the land of fruit and nuts, which is California. And, my brother-in-law saw the problem. He saw that we had a drinking problem. And he took my wife to her first AA meeting. And then I proceeded to follow her 3 days later, and that was it'll be 39 years, March 15th this year.
Wow.
And this all happened around 1982. I just got done with Alice Cooper. I couldn't survive in the music business. I was by myself. I was trying to earn a living in Hollywood as a non-trained drummer with a little bit of a background, with a resume where I played with this person, that person. And I had some really good credentials. And I hustled on the street to get work. And I was literally passing out resumes to every manager and agent on Sunset Boulevard. And finally I got lucky. And Alice Cooper's office called me. And they said, "We need a band for Alice. Can you put one together?" And I said, "Yeah, no problem." So he says, "Well, get them together and get back to me." So I called Dwayne Hitchens, who is the keyboard player that did You Think I'm Sexy with Rod Stewart.
Sure.
I had Mike Panera, who did Ride Captain Ride, another hit. I got the bass player that used to be with the Turtles, Eric Scott, and myself. And we went into a rehearsal hall and played about 5 songs. And Ellis came in, kind of striding in with his non-ego personality, and he goes, "That's the way I want my band to sound." And we got the job. And we were on the road for 4 months. I mean, in a bus.
Wow.
Because, we didn't fly. We just took the bus. And after I got done with that tour was when everything just hit bottom. I just, I couldn't find work. I was drinking too much. I was trying to escape. And then, finally when I relocated to Illinois, I got into the program. And I've been in it ever since. Today I own a cosmetic company that my wife put together. It's about 35 years ago, and it's a $12 million company. It's called BioElements, and she was an esthetician when I was playing music. She used to do facials on Robertson Boulevard in West Hollywood, and she used to do all the celebrities, and that's how we developed that product line. And ever since then, I did lose her 3 years ago, and I think Hawk had mentioned to me that you were trying to get a hold of me a couple of years ago, and I just wasn't ready to do anything. I just didn't want to deal with anything. I was in a tremendous amount of grief and loss and mourning, because I was with that person. I mean, we kind of basically grew up together, and she's very smart with music. And she used to go to jazz clubs on the south side of Chicago. She was the only white person there.
Right.
And she saw everybody. John Coltrane, Dizzy Gillespie, Shirley Scott, you name it. And she was only 15 when she was going in there. It was like, so, that's the story about me today. I'm sitting in Santa Monica. I've got a great business going for me. I got an electronic drum set, a rolling set. I got a set of acoustic Gretsch in the basement, which is, very hard to distinguish in California. I mean, nobody has a basement, but like, and it's kind of cool because I remember when I was a kid, my brother had a band, I had a band, and my younger brother had a band, and they all used to play in the basement. And kids would look through the windows, the basement windows, and listen to it and watch us play. So that kind of gives me that same feeling now when I go to the underground parking lot here. But I still play every day, at least an hour. I jam with a really good guitar player. His name is Jeff Dixon, and he's not a pro. He's in a sense of a professional versus an amateur. It's like when you talk about golf, there's guys that play as good as pros, but they never did it for a living.
Right.
And this guy Jeff has got great timing, and that's why I play the songs. We got about 30 songs we play. It's like 2 hours of playing music, Wednesday and Saturday, and then the other days I keep playing. So I hope that answers.
Well, first of all, I mean,
I'm blessed.
I want you to talk about, first of all, I'm sorry to hear about you losing your soulmate. I just wanted to know if you communicate with her still.
No, every day. I mean, there's, like Danny said, when I first lost Barbara, I didn't want to live. And he goes, I'm coming over. I says, no. I says, leave me alone. Just leave me alone. He goes, I'm not going to leave you alone. I'm coming over. So he came over from the valley and sat with me for 4 hours. And neither one of us said a word to each other. We were watching a football game and stuff. But he was there for me. There's something to be said about having a true friend.
Sure.
When you have a real friend, it's someone that will just sit next to you and just be there. I forgot where we were going. I lost track.
I like to talk to people about how they still communicate with their even when someone maybe has transitioned to a different life or they've left this body, like how because you were connected to them, and then how do you still communicate with them?
I'm glad you brought up the question again. She's like Danny said. He said, you're going to find someone else. You will fall in love again, but you'll always have a special place in your heart for her. He said that, I said, wow, that's a really good statement. So I do have that special place in my heart for her. I still love her. I got pictures of her all over the place. Stuff that's in this house that's from all the traveling we did from Hong Kong to Paris, everywhere in the world, artifacts and pictures of her, and, posing for me in Paris, and just, it's just, everything is the same except she's not here in the body. She's here in the spirit. That'll never change.
Right.
But I did find another girl. If I could tell you about her, I'd love to.
Go ahead.
Briefly bring her up.
Please.
Like you said, I golf a lot, so I managed to find a golf course in Santa Monica because there's, when I was living at PGA West in La Quinta, California, all I have to do is get my golf cart out of the garage and go right to the golf course. It's that simple. Here, it's different.
Yeah.
You got to travel. So I asked Jeff, who's the jammer, guitar player I'm with. I said, he's a golfer too. I said, where can I play? He goes, well, you could go to the Veterans Administration at the Heroes, and they have a 9-hole par 3. I says, you know what? I'm going to check that out. And I did that about 5 years ago. I went there every other day, just playing. I ran into Tommy Chong. He was, and I got to tell you, I have to tell you about this because this goes back to the Madura days.
Yeah.
Did you know that they had a nightclub on Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood?
What was the, oh yeah, what was the name of it? I do remember. I think the drummer from Three Dog Night told me about that. But go ahead.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you're 100 because he was married to, I think, Cheech Chong's sister
Right,
or
right,
cousin or something like
right,
that.
right.
So anyway, I go up to Tommy, I said, that's Tommy. So he was ready to tee off on the fifth hole. And I says, excuse me. He goes, what? What's up? I says, do you remember a band called Madura that played at your nightclub? And he turns around and looks at me. He goes, you're not talking about Johnny Be Good, are you? He goes, Madura? He says, that's the best friggin' version I ever heard of Johnny Be Good in my life. And I said, well, I was a drummer. He goes, oh, man. He says, I can't believe it. He says, you guys were hammered it because we were the opening act for them. Before they were even famous, Gershio said, you're going to play 20 minutes or 25 minutes at this club for Cheech and Chong. And I had no idea what he was talking about. But he was there. And I said, wow, after 50 years, this guy still remembers Johnny Be Good of the first album.
Sure.
You heard.
It's one of the greatest versions I've ever heard in my life.
And that's the song we opened up with when we were on the Chicago tour. That was our first song. And it was just, it got everybody off the ground. Anyway, so I used to go to this Heroes golf course. Now, excuse me, after 2 years of grieving, I was sick and tired of looking for women online, eHarmony and this, TikTok
bullshit.
and all that.
Yeah, total bullshit.
Just like, oh, man. I'm so tired of going to coffee shops. I don't want to deal with it anymore. Because you have to usually meet someone in person where you're surrounded by people, to
Absolutely.
be civil, because they don't know who you're meeting up with. So I said to my doctor, I says, man, I can't take this anymore. I said, I'm like seeing 4 ladies. I don't like any of them. And he goes, well, he says, you probably need time out. I says, you're right. So I took the time out. Excuse me. And out of nowhere, this lady who's working behind the counter, booking tea times, was there. And I was just kind of looking at her, and I said to my golf instructor, who was a Marine veteran from Vietnam, I says, you think she'd talk to me? He goes, why not? Go talk to her. So I said, I was really scared. And, I didn't know anything about dating. I was with the same person for 45 years. So I had met her at the golf course, and I asked her, I said, do you want to play a round? And she goes, yeah, okay. And she told me later, she says, I almost didn't want to show up because she's a Marine vet. So she's, they all have their issues. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with her, but, they're very careful about things. But she did show up, and we played a round of golf. And on the ninth hole, I said, well, whoever wins this hole, we're going to go to El Cholo, and, that person will pay for dinner. She goes, okay. Well, I let her beat me, so I could get the round. And that was almost two years ago. We fell in love. We're living together at my condo, and she's, I told her she's the second best thing that's ever happened to me.
I'm so happy to hear that, man. That's it's so lucky to find not just one soulmate, but then a second. As far as I'm concerned, I remember when I asked Hawk a couple years ago about you, and he's like, and he didn't tell me why. He just said, he's not really in the right headspace. And then, so I do feel in some ways like the presence of your late wife, and I'm very honored to be able to conduct these interviews with you, to be able to, tell these stories as part of the record. I think it's really important, and I think that if you genuinely enjoy spending time with somebody, a domestic partnership is not easy. I was married for 13 years. We had 2 beautiful daughters, and they're like,
Oh.
and it's like, I mean, they changed
Mm-hmm.
my whole life in the sense they fundamentally, I mean, there's that whole thing in Medora, rebirth through childbirth,
Oh,
and
I know.
I was
Yeah.
literally, I mean, I was reborn. They helped me dream again. They helped me find my voice. They continue to inspire and teach me every day. So, but that being said, domestic life, relationship, not easy, period. So, I mean, if you find somebody that you got simpatico with and you have a good rhythm together and you enjoy spending time together, you know, I mean, I think that's what most people are looking for, and if they're not, they're caught up in relationships that have been going on too long, or they're just playing it safe, or, in your case, she left the body, and you're still protected. So I mean, that's a beautiful thing, man. I wanted to ask you. I mean, I was so inspired by our first hang that I went back
Mm-hmm.
and I started to transcribe a lot of my interview with Hawk,
Mm-hmm.
because I had not, and he said that as far as I know, Al, as far as the scat singing, he said
Mm-hmm.
Al got the scatting from a local guitar player named Carmen Mena. This guy sang
That's
like
right.
Johnny Mathis and played guitar like Wes Montgomery. He was an absolute
Mm-hmm.
monster, drop
Mm-hmm.
dead, good looking Italian guy. He would do this solo act and make so much money because he had no overhead. And Al took lessons from Carmen and said, this is before you joined the band. Bangor Flying Circus started playing around Chicago, and George Benson came through with Jack McDuff. I'm fairly
Wow.
certain that George came and saw us and picked up that scat singing from Al. And regardless of that's speculation, but I mean, when he went on and talked about the fact that you guys would be playing, and within 2 miles of each other, Sinatra was at the Happy Medium, McCoy Tyner, Sam and Dave,
Mm-hmm.
Benson and
Mm-hmm.
McDuff, Rod Stewart, Baby Huey and the Babysitters, Sam Lay and
Oh.
Bloomfield. I mean, we're there. So he talked about this cat. He snuck out of his mom's house when he was 16 and went to go see this guy, Junior Prince. Let's see here.
Junior
Prince
Maines.
Prince James. Prince James. He was
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
he was, and I'm just wondering if you were. Um, can you talk about some of the maybe when you were really young, if there was somebody who maybe took you under their wing? This guy let Hawk. Hawk was sitting out. The guy was playing in like almost like it looked like a storefront with a trio. He saw Hawk was freezing. He invited him in, and this guy was like, he's playing bebop organ, just ridiculous, and like Larry Young type stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, how old are you? Hawk's like, I'm 16, and he's like, you dig the organ? And Hawk's like, yeah, and he's like, you sit right there, and he let him just sit there and watch him. And that's like
Mm-hmm.
the most beautiful apprenticeship ever. It's better than anything Berkeley could do, or Guitar Institute, or North Texas, any of those schools. That's the best education. And I just wonder, obviously you were hanging with, all the cats in the neighborhood. There was just a lot of rhythm coming out. But I just wonder if there was somebody older than you at a certain point when you started. Maybe you would sneak out of your house, and somebody that sort of took you under your wing and really just let you absorb through osmosis the magic of rhythm.
Um, well, I haven't talked that much about my brother Frank, my older brother. He's 78, and I'm 74. And he was the first drummer in the family
Wow.
to start playing drums. So, I used to sneak down the basement and play his set. Nobody knew I was doing it. If you would have found out, the older brother gets upset. You're touching my drums. And, but he also was playing a lot of groups, and I used to sit at the steps, the stairs above the basement. You could look and watch the band. And then he started playing clubs. There was a place called the Twist Lounge, which was in Elmwood Park on Grand Avenue. And I was only 16 years old at the time. And my my friend who I was playing with at the time in a band, Rich Pecorari, we used to do all the Ventures stuff. That was the band.
Of
All I
course.
had was a snare drum and a cymbal. That's all I had. And we played Venture stuff. And Pete Pataglia was the bass player, and he was a Vietnam vet. But I was looking in the parking lot of the Choice Lounge, trying to hear my brother's band because he was a really good player. He had a certain feel to him that I could never even mimic. It's just I'd have to see if I can find a copy of some of the things that he did. And his wife, to this day, always said, "Well, Ross was a great technician. He had a lot of chops, but Frank plays like a brother." And that was her opinion.
I mean, just for the
Well,
record, I mean, she's a little. I just want to say that, that most people, if you read the reviews off a lot of the Medora on YouTube, a lot of cats just say like the drummer is freaking ridiculous, and I don't ever feel like you're like showing off facility. I always feel like it just feels really good. So anyway, he might have played like a brother, but it felt your drumming felt really good.
Well, this is when I was 16,
Sure.
too, so I wasn't even developing drums yet. They tried to talk me out of playing drums, so I went and bought an electric bass, an Epiphone bass guitar at this music store. And then I took up double bass at St. Mel's High School band. And I used to take that sucker on the bus. They used to rent it, they'd sign off, and they'd let me take it home. Well, when you get dropped off at the bus, you're like 2.5 blocks from the bus stop. I'm carrying a double bass with no wheels on it, over my shoulder.
You had an upright bass. You had an upright bass you were carrying around.
Yeah.
Oh
a
my.
double bass. Yeah. And finally, I got sick and tired of it. I just threw the Epiphone bass under the bed, and I says, "Man, I can't do this anymore." So, I went and traded it in for a snare drum at the music store. But the influences for me, after, when I got up to be around 19 years old, that's when I quit high school. I said, I can't deal with this stuff anymore. I got to get out. And my parents weren't happy about it. But once they saw that I was really trying to earn a living and make a career out of it,
Sure.
they supported me with it. They just didn't like the fact that I was making my own decisions at 19, But
Sure.
a lot of people that influenced me were my brother, Bobby Ruffino, Lee Graziano, Danny Serafin. Oh, and there's one other guy, Dwight Kelb, and make sure you write this one down.
I will.
Dwight Kelb was probably the most innovative drummer of all the drummers in the neighborhood.
Really?
Unfortunately, yeah, his name was Dwight Kelb, and he played in a band called Jimmy Ford and the Casuals. And I used to go watch him play all the time, and I said, "Man, this guy plays like Elvin Jones." He's just like. This is incredible. I didn't even know who Elvin Jones was at the time.
Right.
But Dwight was playing a Black Roger set, 4-piece, and he was just really a great, great player. And if you ever talk to Danny again, you might want to bring Dwight Kelly.
Oh, I definitely will bring up Dwight Kelly.
Because he will tell you the same thing. He said, "He's a great player." So these are all guys from the neighborhood. And, I didn't have to really go any further than that. Now, I will say that the drummer that played with Baby Huey, the Babysitters, was another phenomenal drummer. My girlfriend said to me, she goes, "What does it mean when you say in the pocket?" She didn't even know what it meant.
That's all right. Dude, I love that she's asking. Yeah.
I says, in the pocket means is when you play something where you have a feel, when you're playing the drums rhythmically with a feel that's not just mechanical. You get out of, you're playing perfectly on time. And Jr. is the perfect example for that. He can play with a metronome and play under it and on top of it. And you'd never know that the metronome is on. You turn it off and there it is, that's in the pocket. That's a perfect feel. And that's why he's so successful. He's a highly trained drummer, schooled sight reader, but he also has a great feel, So those are all the guys
I dig.
that influenced me, and I still have to talk about Billy Hart.
Well,
He
you
was
know, that
probably
story before was I put that I transcribed that story and put it on Facebook. I
mm,
mean, it
mhm.
is such a beautiful. The fact, first of all, he was on a break, so he just came randomly to check out your
No,
band.
he came. No, what happens up above the Pussycat? There was a showroom called the Happy Medium,
Right.
and they used to have all kinds of name acts there. They had Sergio Mendes, Brazil '66, performing, and I guess Billy Hart was friends with the drummer. So what he did is he went over there, probably home with him during his break, and came. Then he ran downstairs and he heard us. The Pussycat was a showcase for people that were in town. Um, they wanted after the concerts they would come down to the Pussycat and listen to us play. Les McCann, Jefferson Starship, all these different groups. And the bass player that passed away from the Stones, he used to come down, and it was a hangout. It was just like a hangout place. And that's how Billy Hart heard me. He heard Kevin, who was a B3 player, and of course he was playing with Jimmy Smith. So he saw that I could play with a B3 player. And he also, I think the main reason that he asked me is because I was young. He knew I was a young guy. And I
Right.
don't know how old Billy is, but he was like, I got to get this guy to come over and sit in. This is a young guy. And he sounds like he can, he can play the
Wow.
groove.
Wow.
So that's what happens a lot. Like, Joe Zawinul.
Sure.
Okay, before he was with his own group, he was with Cannonball Adderley.
Absolutely.
And when Hawk and I and Maduro were up at the Caribou Ranch, he came up there. I guess he was doing a recording, and he sat in with us, and we all played
No.
together. Yeah.
Oh.
Uh, and we had a recording there. And when we got done playing, he was running around the studio, goes, "Youth, youth, listen to the youth." It's like, and I think that's why we got away with playing with a lot of jazz players, because they saw these young guys that were really young, but yet they weren't playing Motown stuff or anything. They were playing jazz.
Oh, dude, they were so getting off on how you guys were so creative. It was so beautiful.
Yeah,
You
I
had to be
mean,
inspired, especially because Billy was like, I remember seeing Billy on a with Jody Christian on an Eddie Harris album. I mean, Billy's not that much older than you. He had that. That's probably his first gig was with Jimmy, but just the idea. You know what it is? I want you to just talk about something. What is it about playing with someone who's creating bass lines with their feet, with the organ? Those bass lines are rounder. They're different than an electric bass player. So what is the technique? How did you become? How is the groove different between playing with a Hammond organ player and an actual electric bass player?
the difference is when I started playing with a B3 player who was Kevin, we hired him to play B3 organ, and we didn't have a bass player. So he said, "Well, I got this. There's this. I got a B3 with pedals. I can play bass." So I was accustomed to playing with a B3 player. I didn't even know what a bass player was, except guys like, Lou Satterfield and stuff. Kevin was so fast with his feet on the bass, and you could hardly watch his feet move across the floorboard. It was incredible. Like dum 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 dum. We used to do like Rock Candy and all kinds of songs,
Sure.
stuff like Jack Nicholson, and he was all over the place. So I wasn't really used to bass players. I was used to listening to Jack McDuff, Jimmy Smith, going to see all these guys that had B3 players. Rarely did I ever see a bass player. That's just the way it happened. The difference is, well, first of all, I'm a B3 lover. Scott May, who I think he works for Hammond, he's always at the NAMM show. He knows about Madura too, and he knows the importance of keeping the B3 Hammond organ in existence. But there's a lot of guys that'll say things like, I don't like the sound of those B3. They sound scratchy, because the Leslie
Sure.
has a barrel on the bottom that's almost made out of like paper and it's got a real scratchy sound. And someone asked, I won't say who it was, but someone who's a conductor and a symphony writer, he says, I don't like B3s. They're noisy in the studio. Well, that's how they're supposed to sound.
Absolutely.
They're supposed to sound noisy. But that's my thought on bass. The only bass player that I really enjoyed performing with was Terry Kath. When we did the Bobby Lamb solo album, Terry played bass.
Wow.
Did you ever hear that album?
I'm not. Talk about what that was. Talk about that experience. I'm not hip to that album.
Yeah, you should look into that because it was a great experience. Terry originally started off as a bass player and a drummer, and then he went into guitar. But Bobby wanted different players in his solo album, so he got Terry to play bass, and he wanted me to play drums. And it was a great experience because Bobby, when you're recording with Bobby Lamb, or even at the time, back up at Caribou Ranch when we did our Madura 2 album, I mean, you can hear, every little squeak, on your pedal. I mean, the microphones are hot, not like today. You could hear everything, and I had to play very, very good to get away with that, overtone. And it was a great experience. I mean, it was really good. We did one of the songs, actually, that was on that album called Skinny Boy. Bobby wanted to put it on the Chicago 7 album. And he did. He put it on. He got the Pointer Sisters to sing on it. And then he had the horns, the Chicago horn section, overdub on that. And I said to Danny, I says, why did they do that? He goes, they were just screwing around with me. They were trying to taunt me. And to this day, I can't figure out why did they put that song on the Chicago 7 album when no other drummers ever played on that album,
Wow.
That's not an ego. That's just it's like, I can't figure that out to this day.
I mean,
but when we're talking about bass players, Jimmy Guercio was another. I used to say Jim Guercio and Terry Kath are probably the two best bass players ever.
Guercio was. Was he? What made it so intoxicating? Was it like he was playing counterpoint to the vocals, or it wasn't like he was playing up. I thought you were going to say that to me, there was something ingrained in your subconscious. If you were definitely hauling that double bass around, that guys like Ray Brown, other, that stuff is like that stuff. That's like the roots, like you might. To me, like that stuff was embedded in your DNA,
What's the question?
No, it was because you said you really always were just used to playing with a Hammond B3 player. And I feel like, the bass was something that was already embedded in your system. So like, it creates just like a foundation. I don't understand. Going back to Guercio, what was it about his playing that was?
He was very, very authoritative in his playing. And I'll tell you what song to listen to. It's called "Save the Miracle."
Yes.
On Madura 2. And he actually plays this lead riff in one of the sections there where he just goes in wails. Or if you listen to Wishing You Were Here from the Chicago song, he plays this guitar solo on there, and that's Jimmy Guercio. He's an extremely talented person, and he's got a great feel. I mean, he's way up there with the feel.
Dude, I'm just looking.
And
I'm freaking out because I have the double first album. I'm looking here at Madura 2. I cannot believe I'm not that hip to this album. as much as the first one, but it said Joe, Dr. Honoris Causa, Joe Zawinul.
Mm-hmm.
That was off. I don't know if I'm not sure where you decided to but that was cut on a Cannonball album live from the Troubadour in the same year. I can't believe that you covered that tune. That's one of the funkiest ever.
I think that happened because Joel was there at the time, and Hawk says, "Let's put this song on our album." You know, he said we used to play that song a lot when we were doing live gigs.
That is so freaking awesome, dude. I mean, anyway, continue. The Guercio really was a serious player. He could really play.
Yeah. I mean, can I tell you a short story about Electro Glide in Blue? Have you ever heard of that movie?
No, I don't think so.
Probably not. Okay. Look that one up. Electro Glide in Blue. I did a drum solo in this movie. It was about cops that rode Electro Glide Blue motorcycles. And it was all based around that, and it was based on a murder that happened, and so on and so on. But Guercio produced and directed this entire movie. It was back in 1972, I think it was. And he came over to our house, where Maduro was living up in the ranch. And he says, "I want you to learn these songs and play them exactly the way I have them on this cassette." So he was actually laying out these tracks on a grand piano that he had in his house. And he played the songs. And he goes, "Don't change anything. Play this exactly the way this is recorded and learn it, because you're going to go in and do the soundtrack." Well, he knew that I wasn't a reader. So he said, just like Bobby White said in our last interview, learn the song by ear, and I'll let you handle it from there.
Oh, I love it.
So I went in and did this session with Jimmy Haskell, who's a conductor in Hollywood, and we just hammered all these songs. and Terry was playing bass on it. Terry Caff was playing bass guitar on the soundtrack. Larry Carlton was on guitar. And
dude, what's the electric? What is this called? Electric what?
Electra Glide in Blue.
Electra Glide in. This is so Jake Feinberg, man. Unbelievable. You're telling that was okay. Go ahead.
No, but and that's what happened. But going back to Guercio, I mean, he got me in with the Beach Boys after I said, I can't deal with this anymore. This band that he tried to put me in, I says, I can't. They're not for me. He goes, "I'll take with the Beach Boys. Come into L.A. We're going on the road in 2 weeks." And that was it. It was a political move, because he was playing bass with them. And they put me in the band.
Well,
so, you should hear him play the Beach Boys songs. It's like, I can't even describe it.
I just wonder why Ross Salomone did not get an acting part in this film. Hawk Walensky, VW bus driver, Terry Kath as Killer, Walter Perezider as Loose Lips. I mean, I can't. Mm-hmm. This is insane. I'm. Thank you for hipping me to this, dude. 1973 action film, Electra Glide in Blue. Ross Salomone all over the kit, dude. Unbelievable.
And they recorded that on Panavision in Tucson, Arizona, at this amphitheater. Probably held 15,000, 20,000 people. And there was a scene there where the main actor, I can't remember his name now.
John Wintergreen.
No, it wasn't him. It was a little. Well, anyways, he got thrown out of the detective office because he wasn't doing his job, and they put him on street work. So he was in charge of holding the audience back from this concert, and that's how I got on it. You got to see the movie.
Dude, it says the movie was filmed in Monument Valley in Fountain Hills, Arizona. Nick Nolte is a hippie in this film. I cannot even believe. Dude, I got to get this immediately, man. I mean, I want to play you another sound clip, another
Okay.
name that voice. You're not going to know who it is, but pay attention to it, and then we'll come back.
Mm-hmm.
The Montgomery brothers were playing jazz. They were playing jazz. They couldn't hang with blues musicians, man. You can make a blues musician jazz musician. You can't make a jazz musician blues musician.
Oh, I love it. Wait, explain that though. I mean, see, most people would never in today's world. Everything is so tech chops driven, so they would assume people younger cats would say the opposite. But why can't you make a jazz musician a blues? Why can't they hang?
Because the music comes out of blues. It doesn't go the opposite way. I mean, if you tried to make a little white boy from Walnut Creek play country and western, that'd be just hard for him too. Country, I mean, it goes both ways. It's not only in the jazz and blues, but you can't make a jazz musician. Calvin Keys is a friend of mine, but if I asked him to sit still on one chord for 5 or 10 minutes, he shit on himself. He can't stay there. He got to move, man. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And he might not even know why. You know what I'm saying? But that music was blowing out a lot of patience and flowering fields. And anybody that didn't do that, you can go up from the bottom, but it's hard to come down. People got a lot of.
Ross, that was an interview I did with this guy was the originator of Oakland funk, Johnny Talbot, and the Fangs, and he was out, and he I wanted you to talk a little bit about what he was saying in the sense that you can go from the bottom up, but it's hard to go from the top down. And I feel like when I'm listening to a lot, like Dr. Honoris Causa, that is the most burning, bluesy jazz tune. The blues is right alongside the jazz. You can hear it. You can feel it. And I don't think you necessarily have to be in the cotton fields to know the blues. But I'm curious about what I hear in modern jazz or modern improvisational music today. It's very heady. It's very intellectual. I don't hear the blues. I think it's very hard for students who are going into academia on scholarships or being able to pay money. Nobody's really living a blues life. I mean, I would disagree with Talbot in the sense that Wes Montgomery was a cement mixer in Indianapolis and had 8 kids. So he definitely lived the blues. And I guess I wanted you to talk a little bit about how you authentically learned to play with that feeling, and what's your advice to younger cats today about incorporating a blues feel into their repertoire?
You have to listen to people like B.B. King, guys that name their guitar. What's the name of his guitar?
Lucille.
I mean, he's just. But let me take it a little bit further than that. I got a perfect example. Back around 1978, when I was on my own in L.A., I ran into a keyboard player that was from Chicago that used to do a lot of record sessions in this place called Cadet Records.
Sure.
That was an L.A.-based record company downtown that would literally take guys off the street and record them. And here's how we did it. There was a four-channel recording machine. The guy that ran it, was big black knobs on it. It was just as old school as you could get. And we would go in with a bass guitar, the piano player, and I'm going to bring up his name later, and then myself. And the guy would come off the street, and he goes, "Man, I don't read no music. He says, I can only tell you this is the chord, so let's do it." He had an index card about that size, a piece of paper with chords written on it. And the piano player would run down the chord structure. And then finally, when we got the feel of it, we would figure out what the tempo should be and how it should be played. And we recorded the songs that this guy brought in off the street. An hour later, we were done. Went across the street where the record plant was, and we got paid. and they pressed and mixed the record the same day. Now that's blues.
Right. Right.
Does that make sense?
Well, it sounds like you got the feel note in the moment, you cut it,
Mm-hmm.
and it was done that day. There was no time to ruminate about it, to think about it. I mean, was the album generally like, was that the sort of, I hate genres. That's the thing about Medora that's so great. I mean, I thought about this last time when you talked about why it never got the records. You could never find the records. I'm not sure if they knew what to do with that record, but
I think you're right about that part.
yeah, I mean,
I remember hearing that in your last conversation. It's like they didn't know where to file it. There was no section.
dude, it was young, hungry dudes who were just like, I mean, you could hear Jimmy Smith into Chicago blues, into pop music. I mean, and the vocals were so unique. Those guys, incredible singers. I just wonder, like,
But this company, this cadet that I'm talking about, these were blues players. These were guys that were just like bum 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 bum, and doing a shuffle like that. And he'd be singing the songs, playing his guitar. He had one of those guitars that had like round silver covers on it, on the top of the guitar itself. I forget what they call them. Is it like a steel guitar or something? I don't know.
Jeez.
It was an acoustic guitar, and they just put a microphone to it, and that was it.
I love this.
I mean, they had like one mic on you. That's all. Just an overhead mic.
This is interesting to me. You're telling me that because I just my fourth book is about to come out, and my interview with Ahmad Jamal is in that, and Chess. So Leonard Chess started Chess Records, and I see all this Chess Cadet stuff. A lot of Charles Stepney, Odell Brown. I see, but you're telling me Cadet was actually a West Coast offshoot of Chess, and it was for really authentic.
No, I wouldn't say it was that in that category. Chess was like Motown.
Right.
This Cadet record was just a company that would literally record people, press it, and get it out the door and sell so many albums. And that was it. That's how they made their money. I don't even know where they distributed this stuff. It was just another gig for me. I went in, got paid, and I was done. But this is like, one afternoon, and the whole album's finished. But these guys were blues players. These guys played better blues than anybody I've ever played with.
Wow.
They just had it totally down, And I'm playing with this brother in Pat DeVono, who was the piano player. You might want to write his name down. Pat DeVono.
How do you spell the last name?
DEVONO. I think he's in Facebook too. He'll tell you a lot of stories about that kind of stuff. The sessions that we did that were with blues players, and I'll see if I can get some copies of that.
Oh my,
so
dude! I have DEVANO.
Let's see, DEVA. Yeah, DeVano, Pat DeVano. Yeah, I think that's it. If not, I'll find it for you.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, that is so. My God, my head is just spinning right now. Can you talk about when was the first time that you connected and laid eyes on Hawk Wolinski?
They were playing on State Street at a place called Beavers. It was a nightclub. And Michael Tedza was the drummer. Really good player. If you ever listen to Bang or Flying Circus,
I listened to. I mean, it doesn't. He's a great player. He's a good player.
I don't know to this day why he didn't continue. There must have been some kind of
a riff.
Something going on that I don't know about. Because when I used to listen to that album, I said to myself, "Man, I want to play like that." Because I didn't, I never had the opportunity to play that kind of stuff. I was doing top 40.
Sure.
So when I heard them play, I said, "Man, these guys are really good." And then I get a call from Hawk. He goes, "We just Mike Tiggers got fired or whatever the reason was. I don't know. But he says, you guys, want to come in with us?" I says, "Yeah." So I joined the band in Chicago. And we played some clubs. We played around the Chicago area, and that's how we met. The Hawk used to come down to my basement, my parents' house, and it's not easy getting a B3 down there. I'm telling you, it's not easy.
I don't know how you did. What did you get it through the windows in the base? How did you do that?
Well, we had a back door that had about 6 steps down, and then you turn to the left, and there's the door. So we had to get the B3 down the steps and then lift it straight up, and then pull it out from there and get it in.
Oh my
and that and Leslie and Al and I and Hawk used to practice down there. It was just insane, But the guys, that's how I met them. And I found out later from Hawk that he actually learned how to play keyboards from Al. Al taught him how to play keyboards.
Are you kidding me, dude? Al,
no,
Al, man, freaking legend.
I'm not going to say that's written in stone, because when Hawk listens to this, remember, you told me, Hawk, that you learned something from Al, okay? But I'm just trying to bring out information.
It's all right. Hawk's moving right now. He's very busy. He's moving into a very big house, and he's very excited about that. But when he hears this,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when you think back about, did you actually, you like you said, you weren't a reader, you weren't immersed in the studio scene like Blaine Keltner or those cats, but did you reach a point in music, especially in the studio, when you realized that Guercio is obviously a musician, and he gave you guys a lot of space to do your thing. David Axelrod was the same way. He would leave the musicians alone to do what they did best. It was just a point. I'm curious if there was a point in your career when you recognized you're like, this is a drag, because the bean counters or the people that were quote unquote engineering or producing or whatever, they were so far away from the musicians, but they were telling the musicians what to play. At that point, never happened.
No, that didn't happen. No, I never ever had anybody tell us, whether it was the band members or Guercio, play this way. I didn't like having to remuffle and set the drums up in a studio sounding a certain way, because it was harder to do. It was harder to play on a muffled set. But back then you had to do it, because when you're playing back on a record, or 33 and a third, off of little tiny Jensen speakers that sound like a car radio speaker, you have to do that.
I know.
But when I did the Electric Light and Blue solo, that was done live in Tucson, and they started patting my drums, just saying, "Put pillows in your drums." I said, "I'm not going to do it. I cannot play live like that. I can't. Wow. I'm not going to do it." So they let me get away with it. They said, "Okay, we'll just record you." And when you hear the solo on that movie, you'll know right away that it wasn't a studio.
Dude,
song.
do you have any extra copies on vinyl of this? This is unbelievable. Electric Light and Blue, man.
I think I have a DVD of Electric Light and Blue. I could send it to you.
Well, I don't want you to take your only copy. I really want to hear the soundtrack.
It doesn't matter.
I want to hear the soundtrack.
Yeah, you should be able to get it online through Amazon. If you can't, let me know and I'll send you my.
I will. No, this is the tagline underneath the title of the movie. It says, "He's a good cop on a big bike on a bad road." This has got to be the greatest soundtrack. Thank you. Is there anything you've had an amazingly interesting and burning music career. You now are playing for fun with a friend. You got a lot of songs, and you're enjoying it. Has anything changed? Has your perspective or your outlook on life, and even musically, like during the pandemic? Outside of the normal sort of COVID haze and maybe some loneliness or not being able to see friends or hug people, whatever, it's kind of like, is there anything that you kind of think about now that maybe you took for granted a little bit, and that when we come out of this on the other side, that you're going to go full bore into it, or musically? Is there anything like that?
Are you talking about like the fact of with the COVID locking us down? How does that affect me from?
Well, I'm curious.
When it
Number one,
started
I
to
guess
when
the
it's
better,
over?
the better question is like how much live playing or were you doing before the pandemic, and did you maybe? I mean, no. I think we had a failure of imagination as to, but I mean, live music touring. I mean, there was an article in the New York Times. We're still months away from an actual touring circuit actually viably going again in this country, whatever's left of it. And I'm just curious, musically, if there was anything that you maybe look back and say, boy,
That's the question that a lot of people ask me. In the last
sure
10, 20 years, they're saying, "Don't you miss going out and playing in front of all those audiences? What was your best experience? What would you like to do that you hadn't done when you were in the music business?" And I answered by saying, "You know what? I didn't make that much money as a player, but I will tell you that the experiences that I had were beyond anything I could probably do again. Like, for example, when I went to Japan with the guy that wrote All By Myself, you know who that is? That song?
yes,
Okay. He hired us to go on tour with him, and there was a Yamaha Song Festival that they do once a year in Tokyo in front of like thousands of people, a huge auditorium. And there's a contestant from every country to go in. They get first place from Germany, first place from Singapore, and they all go in and they enter this contest to take first, second, third place. Well, we were in the category. We were in as guest artists, and Carmen, what was his name? Eric Carmen, that's his name.
sure.
Eric Carmen was the guest artist. So they took a 100-piece Tokyo Symphony behind us to play that song All By Myself. And I got the opportunity to play behind the Tokyo Symphony. And I said to myself, man, this is like giving me goosebumps. I can't believe it. And it was an unrehearsed. It was just like, boom, go in and play it. That was one experience. Another experience was sitting there with Jimmy Smith. Another experience was playing with the Beach Boys, Alice Cooper, these blues guys. I mean, every experience that I had, I don't think there's a coin unturned that I could say, well, I wish I would have gone out and did this. There's nothing. There's nothing left on my plate. I just want to put my headsets on and play all the stuff that I enjoyed playing and just hammer it away.
I love it.
The COVID didn't affect me at all. I still got to play at home, go play my 9 holes of golf because they didn't lock down certain courses, do my meetings, my 12-step meetings. And I had my girlfriend. I was a happy camper. Nothing has really changed for me in my life because of the COVID. It just hasn't.
Absolutely. I wonder if, the truth of the matter is your folks saw you very seriously having a musical career at a young age. You made your own decision to, sort of take that path. You were in music for a long time, and obviously, most cats don't get wealthy playing music. But how hard is it today, in your mind, for younger cats to, is music still seen as a viable profession? I mean, the way Hawk.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I got one for you.
Go ahead.
When I went down to the Guitar Center, I wanted to buy an electronic set, and Danny says, "Oh, I can get you a set, from Rolling. Just tell me what you want." And I says, "Well, I don't want to go that route. Let me just go to Guitar Center and tell me what set I should try." He goes, "Well, try this Rolling set." He says, "You're gonna love it. It's just like a real set." And I went down there and I jammed with the guy that runs that department before. He's a younger guy. He's probably 28, 30 years old. And we knew each other. And I sat down and played. And there was this young black kid. I don't think he was 21, 22 years old. He came from Georgia. It was like from North Carolina. He just got here. to L.A., and he's living with his girlfriend, and they're both professional dancers. But man, could he play drums? I mean, I was trying to keep up with this guy.
Wow.
He was just like, he was really hammering it. So after we did that for about a half hour, I asked the guy in the department, I says, can I hook up my phone? I said, I want to play some songs. He goes, yeah, well, that's easy. He says, you can hook up the rolling set to your phone. You can record yourself. You can record the song you're playing. And I started playing different stuff like Art Blakey, and then I did Ain't Nobody and all kinds of different songs. And this kid, he looked at me, and all of a sudden, he saw what I was really about. It wasn't about who's got better chops and all this. I started playing what was me. And that's when his jaw dropped. I could just see him light up. He was like, and when I was done, he says, let me ask you a question, man. He says, how do you become a drummer? How do you get into the business? I says, well, aren't you a drummer? He goes, yeah, but I'm a dancer.
Wow.
He says, I just got here from L.A. He says, how do you do it? And the first thing I said to him, I says, the only thing I can say to you is learn how to sight read. You got to feel. I says, you got all the chops in the world. He says, learn how to sight read. And once you do that, then we'll take it from there. And that was it. And I talked to the guy at the store, the guy that ran the drum department. He goes, oh, he's down there all the time. We just let him woodshed all the time. He just comes down and plays. And I said, that's great. I said, this guy's a good player, but he's got to learn how to read. If he wants to get in the business, it's the only thing he can do. Just throw a chart in front of him and boom, he's done.
Yeah, although totally. I mean, that's, I guess.
Now here's the other way success. The other thing is like Danny said to me when we were traveling, I was saying, there's a lot of good players out there that never make it.
Right.
He says, I know. He says, Rome wasn't built in a day. He says, there's a lot of people out there that should be on the top. He says, there's no way of really determining how to become successful. If you're in a band and you get in a band that really has what it takes, like Chicago, for example, those guys came in from Chicago and they were sleeping on air mattresses in one room together, struggling until they recorded their first album. And then, it took off from there. But they were literally together, living in air mattresses in a couple rooms, and they became extremely successful. I mean, are there better players than me, Danny? Of course there are. There's thousands of them out there. And there's probably a lot of young kids out there that have good chops. They still play well. And there's guys out there in their 20s that can play like Danny and myself or Billy Hart. I've heard them. I've heard people play like that at that age. So they're out there. And the question is what do you tell young people? How do they get into the business? How do they become successful? You got to have the foundation. You got to build it from the ground up. I did it the hard way. I mean, if I had been a great reader to this day, I probably would be doing sessions in L.A. But
sure.
That's my answer.
No, I did. I mean, I just
look at J.R. J.R. You know how many albums that guy has played on?
Yeah, I mean, dude,
Michael Jackson stuff. It's like.
Yeah, I mean, this is like we have to do part 3 because we there's. I just feel like. Listening to the way Hawk would, Frank Sinatra's horn section, Rich Fidoli, those cats would come in, start blowing with you guys. You'd be driving. Rich Fidoli. You'd be driving home at 4 in the morning with a lot of money in your pocket, playing live every night.
What did Rich Fidoli play?
Fidoli was a multi-reed player. He played with Aludine Matthew. He was Sinatra's horns in their horn section, and Hawk said that because you guys would play like 4 sets a night. Frank would play 2. So when they finished their gig, sometimes their horn section would come over and sit in with you guys. It'd be like this one old jam session. But, it seems to me like there's this pervasive attitude in our society, and it's something I want to pick up on in the next session, not necessarily now, but I just want to put it in your head, is just the idea that music today, especially, pop music, whatever that means, is made for pacification. It's not made for burning. It's not made for internally trying to really think or feel. It's just made for background noise or multitasking.
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I can tell you just from watching a lot of guys like Pharrell Williams, he did that song Happy and all that.
Sure.
That there's a lot of stuff out there that people listen to dance to. And there's a lot of pop stuff out there that's absolute necessity for dancing. And I learned that from my girlfriend. She's like, listen to this, listen to that. And if there's not a beat to it, whether it's mechanical or what, there's a certain feel that these guys are still doing out there, allowing people to dance. And that is what the real answer is to music. Music makes people move.
Absolutely.
Whether it's sitting in a chair and just grooving with your shoulders or sitting on the dance floor. It's still there. As much? Well, not really. It's different.
You think that some of this modern pop mechanical music is dance, like you can dance to it? Because I can't really, there's no space in that, in the music.
Why don't we save that for the next?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. We got the next session.
I want you to play something for me the next time so I can listen to it. So you can give me what your example is of that.
Yeah, well, and part of it is also I am literally caught in a time warp. So, yeah, maybe your girlfriend can hit me to some really cool. I just, you know what it is? When that guy saw when you were in the Guitar Center, and that younger cat, you guys were just kind of like playing off each other, and then all of a sudden you started to put on the tunes you loved, and you were dancing. You were letting the body dance.
Let me tell you,
and that's what my whole credo is. That's been one of the reasons I'm in a fog, is not being able to liberate and heal through dancing to the vibrations of a collective unit. It's a very hard thing.
When I say dancing, that doesn't mean necessarily being on a dance floor. Let me give you a real example of how I feel I've been blessed. Okay.
Sure.
This thing that you're talking about, what I have. That's what a lot of musicians have. They get blessed, God says, I'm throwing this in your DNA.
Sure.
And let's see what you can do with it. I'm sitting at a restaurant. It's crowded. So packed. You can hardly, move in your chair. It's just packed. My wife and I and the the cameraman who used to do the Soul Train Awards, and he was a heavy-duty camera guy. And his wife were sitting there. And there's a piano player way out in the distance, and he's playing, and everybody's standing around, they're singing along with all the songs that he's playing. And I grabbed a spoon and a knife, and I started tapping on my coffee cup. Well, to the right of me were these Asian people, and this guy looked at me and he goes, "Oh, yeah, man, yeah, that's it." He got off from me playing the spoons. And the only reason I'm saying it is because the guy that was sitting next to me, the cameraman, he goes, "Did you see what you just did to that guy?" And I said to myself, "Wow, that's really cool. I'm blessed. I'm blessed. Don't ever take it for granted."
Totally. No, Ross Salomone, it's always good to hear your voice, man. I'll hit you up next week and we'll continue the dialogue. And I will, I'm not even talking about dancing like in that sense either. It's more literally being in the front of the stage, in front of the speaker stacks, getting hit by the vibration of the collective unit and healing from that. That is what music is about. It's not about sitting there and staring at people's facility and clapping when you're supposed to clap. The whole thing has been perverted,
yeah.
and that's all I'm talking about. It's like I want to.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Much love to you, man. I will. I'll hit you up next week.
Okay, send me your address, and I will pull out that electric light blue DVD.
Thank you, man. That made my day. Gercio lives, man.
Thank you so much.
Take care, sir. Later.
Be well.
You too. Bye. So good to connect with Ross Salomone, and looking forward to the Electric Glide in blue. We will be back tomorrow with Ben Knight. Until then, this is the Jake Feinberg Show, and we will see you later.
Brush your teeth in less than 10 seconds with this revolutionary toothbrush. It was created by